Thanks for clicking on this video. Be sure to subscribe and click the bell icon and turn on all notifications to keep up to date with the latest information and discussions. One day, long ago, these characters were all the rage. Absolutely stunning. And then they weren't anymore. Why though? Hey guys, MasakoX here. Dragonball has a lot of interesting characters which are rarely like anything we have ever seen, at least prior to watching the series. Akira Toriyama, in fact, prides himself with having people in his stories which break the mold and stand out from their equivalents in many different ways. Some ways can be zany, some ways can be clever, but most ways tend to be in manners you would never have expected. More often than not, with a comedic twist. If you are a regular to this channel and frequent the discussions that Haverock and I have supposed over the years, we often talk about one particular topic that really sticks out for us and gives us a bad case of narrative indigestion. We have often talked about how Toei is most likely afraid to change our favourite Dragon Ball characters. Many times. So what do we mean by change exactly? We're not just talking about changing their literal look, but how they evolve. Anime is best known for its regular use of character development and progression, something that the majority of Western cartoons tend to overlook, although with new series that are coming out now being influenced by anime, that is slowly starting to shift away. However, Dragon Ball does tend to be rife with people that don't really change, even though situations would expect that, they should. Sometimes, in the overall scheme of things, there are some characters who have a bunch of inconsistencies that are never really explained. And these are inconsistencies which, over time, have really begun to grind our gears. So, let's talk about them, shall we? So going back to the title of this video for the moment, what do I mean by boring? Well, what I mean by that is that there are characters that we will touch upon which, in a typical anime or story in general, should have changed many times over, or at least once. Or if they did change, it should have been implemented a lot better. Now, I do understand that Toriyama has admitted a lot of times over the years for not having ideas for certain characters, and as much as I appreciate the man's honesty in that regard, it's still a little galling. It's just really upsetting for anybody who is a fan of said characters to hear that the creator has essentially just given up on them and left them to just dawdle around, only to be picked up again by a passing anime episode writer who likes that character or has an idea for that character, or if Toyotaro is feeling particularly frisky. The author Ian Irvine, author of the Three Worlds fantasy series, talks about changing characters and why it is a bit of a precarious situation for certain people in certain stories. In many best-selling series, the hero never changes, and readers don't want him to because they like him just as he is. Therefore, some characters can't change, e.g. Great Gatsby in The Great Gatsby, which is the point of the story. However, in many stories, protagonists do need to change by the end, and it will be more engaging if they do. Why? People generally resist change where possible. A need to change creates stress and conflict and generates interest and sympathy. Change is more interesting than constancy. It creates variety and stimulates reader curiosity. Can the hero change? If so, how? What will the consequences be? It also gives the story a sense of significance. So today we can talk about Irvine's musings and see whether some characters in Dragon Ball should change or if it's okay that they don't. First, we're going to be talking about a topic we've alluded to for a very long time, Goten and Trunks. And since we've been doing that pretty often, we are going to keep talking about them to a relative minimum. Goten becomes the quirky, confident one, while Trunks is suddenly the respectful, quiet one. Now, I mean, in the case of Goten, there wasn't much personality to begin with, so it is a welcome change that he has become more confident, but Trunks' case is especially weird. Just to give you an idea about what I'm talking about here, the picture below is supposed to take place 3.5 years prior to the end of Z in age 784. And as much as we can defend the whole Saiyan rapid growth thing, that doesn't change the fact that the core of their personality doesn't really get affected all that much. The change in Goten and Trunks feels too jarring. Swapping them around has left them feeling nothing like their original archetypes, and if you were fans of them originally, you might not be now. We've seen other characters growing up in Dragon Ball, namely Bulma, Goku, Krillin, and Gohan, and all those changes felt organic and in keeping with the character. While some of them might have felt a little bit drastic in some occasions, they do feel earned, and if you are following the series throughout, you know why they changed. You understand what happened to lead to those changes. You get it. With Trunks at the end of Z, we don't have that comfort as he has suddenly become quiet, thoughtful, and super respectful. You know what that reminds us of when you really look down into it? Future Trunks. Okay, we now know that present Trunks has met future Trunks between Boo and the end of Z. Thank you, Super. But how can one chance meeting suddenly eschew all of Kid Trunks' stubbornness and energy? And after we actually see it during the Universe Survival arc, it doesn't look like it suddenly disappears. That doesn't make the slightest bit of sense, as our Trunks is a brash loudmouth with two equally stubborn and proud parents. Now, Toei won't give us any proper explanation for that sudden twist. It's gonna bug us forever. So with Irvine's thoughts in mind, we can maybe guess that Trunks' change is down to the fact that it might be more interesting than not changing him. That's my best guess. Toei or Toriyama may have realised that future Trunks was popular, so for Kid Trunks to grow up and become essentially that character, it might be the most well-received outcome by the fans. It might be the most interesting because they like future Trunks. Okay? I get that, but it's not fair for people who may have liked Kid Trunks. It just felt artificial and unlike Toriyama's other examples of characters growing up. Also, when it comes to a character growing up, I think you've noticed that we have omitted one very important character that we saw growing up. It's mostly because it fits to the same category with other really popular characters that slid down a similar path. Now, we're talking about Chi-Chi and Videl, by the way. Now, granted, we do know that Toriyama himself has admitted that he's bad at writing female characters, and that both Chi-Chi and Videl were eventually turned into a construct called the wife. But that's hardly an excuse, nor is it a reason to disregard the whole point entirely. When we first meet Chi-Chi early on in Dragonball, I mean really early on, she is a timid young lady, demure in nature, who is dreaming of a prince that will come to whisk her away. She envisages this to be Goku, of course. However, this didn't last long, as Toriyama couldn't write this type of character well. To be honest, I'm not really fond of Chi-Chi as a character. In the middle of the comic, I started to think, I don't want to draw her anymore. And sort of a way as spiting myself, I decided you'll have to draw her if she gets married to Goku, so marry them off. So I drew her as a kind of punishment. So in an act of self-loathing, Toriyama reverted back to the launch model of writing female characters, something that kinda worked, gave Chi-Chi the chance to meet Goku again at the 23rd Martial Arts Tournament, then just marries her off to Goku, and then gets turned into a comic relief with huge bursts of anger and whoa-oh, angry mom, and a grand dose of overprotectiveness. To kids and teens out there, Chi-Chi has gone from a princess in need of rescue to a sudden badass character in the tournament, then basically aping their own overbearing mother. However, as we all grow older, myself included, I understand that everything that she's done has had good intentions. She's trying to run a family on her own, basically, with little contact with other people, aside from people who are in the Z-Fighters. Hardly the most stimulating a conversation. It must be pretty lonely. But at the same time, it feels really forced that she is so angry and stressed all the time. And as for the amount of education she is trying to put and instill on Gohan, it just doesn't feel right. Did she really have not that much confidence in Gohan's natural abilities and think that he would just be a dullard throughout? That's just so little faith in her own kid's abilities. We are told fairly frequently that Gohan wants to be a scholar, but it really feels like Toriyama forced him to become one through Chi-Chi. It doesn't matter too much when we see him as a kid, but when he becomes an adult and then on into Super, it becomes quite a big factor in his development and why he's such a mess of a character. And Videl is even worse in some regards. Now, from arguably the only one romantic interest that Toriyama managed to write in a decent way, it took him a long time, Videl gets turned into an apron-wearing cleaning maid. We no longer see her train or being sassy at all, which is totally a huge disservice to the character. Maybe Chi-Chi never really had a large warrior spirit, but Videl certainly did. She got all that from the champ, her father. Also, for those saying that she couldn't be because she's a mother now, who said that one couldn't be both a mother and a badass? Maybe she should take a few lessons in that with Android 18. Now to us, it feels like Videl and Chi-Chi played their role and then got shelved in order to serve the same tired formula. although by the end of Z, Chi-Chi does seem to have mellowed out a little bit and is finally drawn with a hairstyle that reflects said change. It's very symbolic. Now, if we were to use Irvine's model for them, Chi-Chi and Videl were changed to instill sympathy and give their story significance, or at least it was tried to. They got what they wanted deep down and their old lives were no longer required. Chi-Chi got her prince and Videl got somebody with a backbone. She didn't have to raise the walls anymore. She could let the walls down, and they came tumbling down, leaving a character at peace. This could also provide some kind of implication to the reader or viewer of deep insight into humanity and how it works, and how that they, the viewer, can also change. I just wish Toriyama maybe put a little more effort into exhibiting this instead of doing so haphazardly. It's already kind of galling to see characters that we grew up with change for the worse, but this isn't just a problem with the older cast. No. There is one huge example of inconsistent character portrayal in a very recent era of Dragon Ball. A character who became quite infamous for what they became in their later appearances after a pretty promising start. And we mean, of course, Zeno. In his first appearance, we were surprised by his childlike appearance and sweet childish voice. Sure, this was very Toriyama, we were thinking. The ultimate being, the king of everything, resembling a small child in both likeness and manner? It's classic subversion and something that felt very fitting, unlike any Supreme Kai or Grand Kai that we'd seen up to this point. That's great. To us, Zeno seemed kinda creepy and mysterious. His words were hiding some sort of wisdom. He is well aware as to why everyone is so scared of him, or what do they feel about him, and he seems amused by this as well as Goku's boldness. And in some regards, he acted much more like the Grand Priest later on. The way said character acts towards Goku in Universe 7 in general, that's what I'm talking about. But after that, he retained some of that mystique when we saw the second Zeno destroying Trunks' timeline, but after the fact that they met and started to interact with each other, they basically became annoying mascots, stating the obvious of what was going on just for the sake of pacing. That's really a shame, since the idea of a childlike being ruling the Omniverse was pretty brilliant. Irvine's model is thrown out of the window. We don't know Zeno long enough to need him to become more interesting, nor can we really relate to him because he's, well, the king of everything. He's a deity. None of us are deities, so he's out of touch with our human emotions. Therefore, his change was something of an unnecessary one. Change for the sake of change. That being said, we still think that one of the most chilling scenes in Super is the one where the two Zenos are playing marbles with planets, being so trivial with billions of lives for the purposes of a little game. But as much as Toriyama loves his subversion, this gets pretty tired. Now, after all of your Majin Boos and Monarchas, Zeno just becomes repetitive, redundant, and quite annoying. If there's no twist in the twist, then what's the point? So what do you guys think? Are there any particular characters or moments that you feel were out of place? Leave a comment below and let's get this discussion going. And I shall see you in the next video. Catch you later!